Welcome to this latest edition of the 4NewMobility Leadership Talk. Today's topic is Smart Cities and AI, the future of urban mobility. And I'm very honored, very happy to have two guests today. It's Sampo Hietanen. He is the founder and CEO of Aspectu. And I have as a guest Ben Foulser, partner at KPMG of UK. So welcome to both of you. Thank you very much for participating in this video podcast. I'm very excited to have you in this video podcast. And first, I would like to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself in a short manner and maybe say a bit already about the topic and why it is interesting for you.
Ben, you go first.
Herman, thank you for the opportunity to join you today. So, as you said, I'm Ben. I'm a partner in KPMG's UK transport practice, and within that, I lead the team that focuses on digital, ESG, and innovation in the transport sector. I've worked in the sector for 18 years across a whole range of transport clients, both transport authorities in the US, UK, Australia, Asia, but also with transport operators. And we help our clients to think about trends that are happening in the sector, how to transform their businesses to take account of new technologies, new business models, and how to deliver those transformation programs to really achieve the outcomes they're looking for. So, as you said, AI and smart cities falls very neatly within that scope, and I'm really looking forward to discussing this with you today.
So my name is Sampo. Don't even try to pronounce the last name. You couldn't either. Background is in all kinds of, let's say, all kinds of new businesses in mostly in transport sector, probably most known from the concept mobility as a service, which is sadly starts to be already about 20 years old. But you know, things take long when it comes to when it comes to cities and when it comes to transport. That's how life is. Currently work as an advisor and board member through the company, like Herman said, called Aspectu. Formerly was the founder of MaaS Global, the world's first MaaS operator.
So thank you very much, Ben and Sampo, for this very concise introduction. And maybe I say a few words, just to introduce into today's conversation, which delves into how AI is transforming urban mobility, making cities smarter, more efficient and sustainable. And by integrating AI-driven solutions into transport networks, cities are enhancing traffic management, optimizing public transport, and reducing emissions. And the rise of AI-enabled systems, in my opinion, has an impact on mobility as a service platforms, on autonomous shuttle services, on electrification of transport, and it really promises to revolutionize how people move within cities in the future. However, these advancements come with challenges, and one challenge is certainly the scaling of autonomous solutions, ensuring user safety, and protecting the vast amounts of data required to power these systems. And as cities become more connected, the need for robust data protection, ethical AI deployment, and innovative public transport systems, and I think that's also a topic very close to your heart, Ben, becomes really critical. And in this discussion, I would like us to explore these key themes, which I just mentioned, addressing the potential benefits and pitfalls of AI in mobility. And my first question would be, what actually is AI, and why is AI important for the future of mobility? And please stay with a very short answer. Yeah, because we will go into more details later. Yeah, but in very simple terms, what is your understanding of AI in the context of mobility?
Now me gets started. Well, to me, it's not like it happened yesterday that AI just popped up. It's an evolution of just more processing power in IT, meaning that we can do much more things. All of those things we probably imagined using the IT in transportation. Much bigger question is what do we want to do with it than what's the existence and how do we define the AI in it? How I see it is it's finally probably becomes an enabler of all of those items or the automation or the ease of having visibility for supply and demand in transportation that we've been dreaming of.
I'd agree with Sampo. I think this is an evolution, not a revolution to a certain extent, although the new technologies and processing power is exponentially increasing it rather than sort of slowly increasing it. And what we to your question, Herman, what we see as AI is actually a combination of various different technologies that are coming together to actually form an integrated solution. So you've got the cognitive element of being able to computers to be able to understand and to read and to digest and to analyze data. You've got the machine learning aspect of it to enable devices or technology to learn from what it's cognitively assimilated, and then you've got the automation element of it to be able to make to automate actions off the back of the learning and the scenarios and the decisions that have been simulated by the machine learning simulations. And when you put all of that together, you effectively get artificial intelligence, which is the ability to go from digest information to assimilate to analyze to simulate to make a decision and to actually automate that decision. And I think that we've had bits of that in transport for quite a long time in things like decision support tools for traffic management or for asset management, where we've looked at predictive analytics and predictive asset management, but it's now starting to pull it all together into a framework and apply it to much more comprehensive and complex use cases.
No, thank you very much, Ben and Sampo, yeah, for this explanation, what AI can deliver in general concerning mobility. Now, to dig a bit deeper into details, maybe in the different aspects where AI can be used. Yeah, I mean, Sampo, you have enormous experience concerning the topic of mobility as a service, and you already explained to us, yeah, that with MaaS Global, you were in the past also leading on the implementation, deployment, and scaling of MaaS. How can AI be leveraged to create this seamless, user-centric mobility as a service experience that as a task, yeah, is integrating different transport modes? Yeah, do you see their AI as a real game changer, or is it nice to have? I mean, what is your view on this?
I would say as a game changer, yes and no. We tend to kind of overthink always technology that it does all of these things, and we put too little emphasis on what on earth do we want it to do. And yet again, we are a bit in this situation where we just say the more AI, the more smarter we are, and no, that's not true. It's always about what we want it to do. It doesn't matter how much of technology we have; it's what we do with it that matters. What it does enable, to me, if I'm looking at it from perspective of the consumer, which should always be the number one key for all of us, is that it enables this mass individualization, which to me has been one of the biggest hurdles for really MaaS services to become valuable enough for the consumer. by this, I'll take an example. I mean, car is the king. It's by far the best service out there for your freedom of mobility. Nowadays you just go, you push a button, and it's ready to take you anywhere. Whereas everything else is a bit catch me if you can, and it's very hard to make a segmented product, a service that works for everyone's benefit. I mean, we used the AI that was there 2017, trying to really tailor make everything to fit the purpose of an individual, and the reality is that they are very different from day to another. We're not one person, so you cannot say that, hey, it's Sampo, he always wants to walk. No, I don't. When it's raining, when I don't feel like it, maybe there was a big party yesterday and I don't feel like it. So it has to really go much deeper into my actual all kinds of tweaks that I want to make. Maybe I want to stay for an ice cream. Maybe I want to do this, and it has to pick up on that. So always keep up with your desires, your wishes, your wants. The whole fulfillment of the freedom of mobility that we actually do want is not an easy task to make it feel like it's all yours. Sometimes you want to feel flashy. You want to ride in a beautiful car. The next day you might be the guy who wants to actually just be in a bus or a train, or you feel like it's sunny out there, I want to walk. And all of these elements need to be tailor-made for you. It needs to know if I'm on crutches, so don't try to make me bike if I'm on this. And it's this kind of individualization that starts to really get the elements together to actually go for the service level that the car has been providing. And yes, I do use the car maybe sometimes a bit too much as an example, but only because it's a brilliant service. It's desirable. People are willing to pay a lot for that freedom that they use relatively rarely. We all know that it's 4% is the usage. In order to get to that, there needs to be a lot of processing power that you feel that you're being treated at all times. And to make that affordable, there needs to be a lot of processing power, not just how we see it as transport engineers, is what's the most effective. Because as a consumer, I don't care what's most effective. I care about what feels good for me. Do I feel like, okay, I'm coming out of a football match and somebody says, hey, actually, I know that you want to get out fast, so I booked a taxi. Here's one for you. You don't need to worry about the stresses in that. Because it is all about the stresses for the individual. I see that as the biggest enabler. The problem still lies with this is that do we have enough dreaming power in our not AI mind, but human minds, of what do we want it to do for us?
I mean, thank you, Sampo, and I would like to build a bit on it. Yeah, my understanding so far with respect to mobility as a service was that it's to a large extent an issue in the context of bringing the stakeholders together to agree on a common approach, yeah, which enables mobility as a service, and not so much in the context of providing the technology. I had the impression that the technology is already there for some time. And in this respect, maybe the question, is AI still making a difference? Yeah, that we can use AI, because you spoke about the processing power. Yeah, I think that's not trivial. Yeah, I mean, there are lots of data which have to be brought together. Yeah, there, for instance, if a person is on a journey and suddenly an accident is happening, there's a traffic jam, and maybe the journey has to be changed. Yeah, I think this already means something. Yeah, to achieve then a situation that the journey can be adapted and all the different stakeholders are properly treated. Where do you see that AI really, from a technical point of view, makes a difference? Is there something you could put your finger at?
Maybe the AI will make it more easy that the ecosystem that we now have in in transportation gets more easier. But no, AI does not help to create kind of an ecosystem where you can integrate a lot of services into one convenient one. That's still in our human minds. Where it does help is the ease of integration. yes, technology is always doable, but it's sometimes relatively expensive. Nowadays, to create an integration layer, you can start computing it much easier and just use the AI by saying, okay, I've got these two APIs. Could we please link them and integrate them? And you can actually use the AI to create that link so that it actually functions. And that does lower the investment barrier, because yes, it's mostly been human, never a technology in integrating different services together. But at the same time, it's often also the CTOs that are scared of, okay, is this another integration project? And that becomes a hurdle. So at least in that respect, it does help. There are a lot of other issues like the EMB getting more used and so on that are just pushing it forward. But the one thing in general, I don't know, Ben, what's your thought on this? But I've been thinking it from a broader perspective, what the internet or technology disruption tends to be. It's that you have the visibility of supply and demand. And if we look at the mobility system now, we do not have actual transparency for that. If we would, we could actually build a much more convenient, much more efficient system. But maybe through the current AI development, but also other developments within the technology, allow this to happen.
It's an interesting question. I think that there are definite builds from a technology perspective which are helping accelerate and enable the adoption of AI. Clearly, even at the most basic level, cloud, compute power, even quantum, when we see it hit the shelves, as it were, will massively increase computing power and the ability to deliver AI. And I think there are also other solutions that are supporting. So Sampo said earlier, quite reasonably, CTOs are concerned that more and more interfaces, more and more connections are creating more integration challenges. But we are starting to see things like semantic web layers appear to be able to align descriptions of data here with descriptions of data here that might not be the same. And AI can help with that. AI can say, you describe that as a train carriage, and you describe that as a car or a bit of rolling stock, and actually the three things are the same. It's just that you have described them in your data schema as different things, and that's made it very difficult and costly to do the integrations historically. But actually now, with these semantic web layers appearing and AI having the ability to understand data schema and to translate them, that will actually help with integrations, and it will mean that what we've had to do historically for European Union regulations or UK regulations, with having to establish very large complex data schema, which has taken years and years of negotiation and collaboration across different parties, can actually go away, and we can say, don't worry about how you describe it, do what you want to do, we'll sort out the integrations and that data connectivity.
So Ben, what you're saying is that AI can provide a kind of interface where it brings the different systems together, because it can interpret different, if there's different wording for the same thing, etc. It can interpret it in a way so that it achieves interoperability between the different systems. Is this correct? Is this a correct understanding?
Yes. That is correct,
Okay.
and I think that's going to be really important in helping to drive interoperability, integration, collaboration, and as Sampo was saying, even as we start to see other forms of payment channels or other forms of machine-to-machine technologies. So I was talking the other day to an automotive manufacturer about machine-to-machine payments, so using your car as a token, for example, and what the automotive manufacturer decides to do with how it deals with that payment mechanism and payment channel will likely be very different to how we describe how we do smart card payments in transport. But actually, ultimately, we want to be able to align these things so that they could form part of the MaaS ecosystems. And so use of AI to analyze those data schema and to harmonize them will help us to provide that more integrated transport.
Mm.
I
And
think
Ben,
we have,
from your experience here with your clients, do you have the impression that I mean, Sampo said already, yeah, the topic mobility as a service is around for already some time, yeah, and there are already some providers of mobility as a service, yeah, but I don't think now it's not yet everywhere, and it's not yet everywhere in a perfect manner. Do you have the impression that the interest, the commercial interest on providing mobility as a service is increasing? Is it decreasing? Is it staying the same? Do you have a feeling about this from your perspective?
Yes, and Sampo and I, he's smiling because we've discussed this a lot in the past. I don't think the challenges of delivering mobility as a service are technology driven. I think they are commercially driven in many cases, and driven by business models. Um, if you look at bus operators in most parts of the world, they operate on razor thin margins, and they want to maintain ownership of the customer. They want to be able to commercialize their own customers. They don't want to have to pay a third party above that to provide an integration layer. Um, and so that's just a general fact of life. You then have the car companies who've been increasingly investing in various different things to continue to retain ownership and commercialization ability for the customer. Um, and what you've got to try to find is a happy medium where, for mobility as a service to actually really scale, it creates incremental and additional supplemental opportunity and revenues for each of the players in the ecosystem, um, than would be there if MaaS didn't exist, um, because otherwise there's no commercial driver to participate. And I think if that's the bit that we absolutely need to get right, which is how do we create an environment where everyone wins, from both on a commercial outcomes perspective, but also wider kind of societal outcomes perspective. So we result in modal shift, but that modal shift is a positive thing, and it's seen positively by all players, and it drives the revenue in the right directions to make it commercially sustainable. But it also can't be a fat layer on top, because transport historically has always been what we refer to in kind of in economics as a distressed purchase. So people who travel, notwithstanding the fact you might decide to upgrade your trip once or twice, but the vast majority of people rationalize and economize their transport, and so you do so um, to make the best economic value for money for the transport you're taking. So what that then drives is a sort of a race to the bottom on pricing, on cost, to secure that, that person, that incremental journey, and it doesn't leave you with much, other than potentially in the actual automotive and the car sector, but in everything else, it doesn't leave you with much to play with.
Now, maybe we even, I guess, stick a bit to mobility as a service when I come to the topic of autonomous shuttle services. Yeah, because I see autonomous shuttle services actually as the enabler of mobility as a service, maybe the final enabler of mobility as a service, because there the driver, who is quite has quite an impact concerning the overall costs of public transportation or any transportation services, gets out of the picture. And it can provide a service where really someone is picked up from home and driven either to another mode of transport or even to the destination. I mean, what do you see as the role of autonomous shuttle services, yeah, in the context of future mobility in cities? And what do you see maybe also as the challenges the autonomous shuttle services face in terms of scalability, in terms of safety? Yeah, because I think that autonomous shuttle vehicles, I think people expect more safety than they expect maybe today from drivers. Yeah, but I leave this up now to your views. Yeah, how do you see this?
Well, do you want to start or should I?
No,
Okay.
please go for it. I'll tag on.
So I would think of it this way. From beginning on, I thought that, this is the AVs will be the ultimate enabler, or that's when mobility as a service, or when we start getting rid of the ownership, putting it that way. Uh, Very hard to see in a big scale that those AVs would be privately owned, and that the ownership would be so distributed that everyone owns its own. It just will be more professional, more efficient, that the fleets are there. Then the next question will be, what is the primary way of taking people from A to B? The obvious one would be that this automated vehicle, shuttle, whatever we want to call it, will take you from A to B. This is what I would want for my convenience, just like a car, but actually an upgraded version of it, because that 90 minute that we spend in transport and have been doing it for always has been wasted time. So this 90-minute becomes my time. So we should not consider those AVs then as cars or vehicles. They're not that. They will be part of our day. They will be our restaurants. They will be our offices, gyms, movie theaters, whatever you desire. So the actual vehicle will not be meant that you want, will not be meant for that. It will be what kind of entertainment or what kind of leisure do you want to do during that time. Now, this brings us to let's say, the urban development and city question. Will it take you directly from A to B? Because if it does, we all know that it will close to double the traffic that we needed. So, but the problem is that the first 5% that adopt it and will start using it, they love it. It's perfect. It's brilliant for you until it gets crowded because everyone else wants the same, and the infrastructure just cannot take it. So this is kind of the moment to think about how that automated future will be delivered. And the biggest question will be, will it take you to a mass transit one way or another, to a station where you then take a bus or commuter train or metro or whatever? And that's not a decision that's made by force, at least not in the let's say the free world that we tend to like. It's made by the consumer choice of pricing and all kinds of convenience elements. But this also means that we know from transport that the interchange is a big friction. People do not appreciate that, which means that the city planning should be based on these hubs, so that when you make a change, let's take London, you take an AV shuttle or AV taxi to the tube station, or you want to go to the metro then, and that interchange needs to be the best part of your day. And I think there's a bit to do in order to get there. So there's a lot of things that are ongoing, but I would say in general, all of these technology developments lead to the point where the ownership, the relationship between car and one owner will start vanishing from this equation. And the AVs are kind of the last enabler of that. Now, then the other part comes from the market dominance and how these markets will be done, because AI is not a cheap trick. If we have players that have both the capability of having using or having their own AI engines, and at the same time they have capability of doing the automated vehicles, they're going to be dominating the field relatively harshly, and these are investments that are very big to make. And also now would be a good time to think about the market dynamics of what kind of markets do we want into this field. Because the other part could be that, for example, the good European public transport system could be AI could be used in a way that if I'm a student now dreaming of becoming a billionaire, I could always rely or make the AI say that, okay, hey, I have this service. I want, please integrate and plug in all the public transportation of Europe into it, and you could do that in a minute. Not happening now, but I would say that now is the right time to really look at the scenarios. And it's also time for, let's say, yeah, I know I hate this word, and to rely on political leadership. Yeah, but we would really need that.
I think I agree with Sampo. The key challenge with autonomous shuttles is if they effectively become that dystopian future of robo-taxis. And we've all seen that lovely image of the people in the cars on a road versus the people on bikes versus people walking versus the people in a bus, and the amount of road space and congestion that it causes. Um, there is, I think, an absolute opportunity for single or low volume, low patronage low passenger number vehicles, but that is in connecting people with transport corridors, mass transport corridors. And it's interesting, we did a piece of work for one of our clients back in 2017 in this space, looking at how you might shift people out of travelling on the main corridor into a city centre to using an underused light rail line. And the economics were quite stark, that it really did deliver a positive benefit ratio, even if you have to pay for the cars and setting up the service, and even subsidizing or potentially even providing it for free, because the congestion relief plus the additional revenue on the light rail line really drove positive benefits. So I think there is a case for single person or low occupancy vehicles in some cases, but they have to connect to spokes, and then or interchanges and hubs. There is also the other question around, well, could you do something on a mass transit basis? Could it be an autonomous shuttle with 8, 10, 16, 20 seats? And I think, yes, absolutely, that has a role to play. But the people who say it's going to immediately save you the cost of the driver, which is 40% of the cost of the bus, are probably quite wrong. Because I think from both a security perspective and also a customer service perspective, most operators will want to continue having some form of passenger service agent on board. So you will still have the cost of a person. But actually, what you might do is improve a whole range of other things, including the patronage, because you're providing a nicer environment with someone who's going to help you on board. The performance of that, which will be optimized for energy usage and consumption, less reduction in safety issues with accidents and other issues, reduction in insurance potentially. So you might save on other things. And so hopefully autonomy does actually drive efficiencies in the mass transit market because of those things. The proof is in the pudding. We'll have to see. There are autonomous bus trials going on around the world today, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of the actual outcomes from those. You also asked about safety, and I think that clearly there is a safety consideration here, but actually I think in the same way that statistically speaking, smart motorways are safer than non-smart motorways, I think you'll find in the vast majority of cases that autonomous vehicles are probably safer than non-autonomous vehicles, and certainly those are the assumptions that we make when we look at the market opportunities and the benefits. Even there was an example, I think, of a Tesla having to actually make the decision between a child and a fixed obstacle about 2 weeks ago that hit the news, and the Tesla veered and hit the fixed obstacle. So that paradigm of do I injure the driver or do I injure the pedestrian, is starting to be tested in real life, and we're actually starting to see some of the outcomes from those.
I could take another kind of point into this. This setting up the transport system tends to be always a kind of a duet or battle between the efficiency of the system. Every transport engineer would know how to do it. We just take away individual cars and we would put people into traveling exactly like we wanted. It would be a brilliant, efficient system, and the optimization of the system would be perfect. Now, on the other hand, we have this individual freedom that kind of prohibits good engineering systems and makes it inefficient, but we kind of love that. And balancing these two has always been kind of the trouble. So we end up actually just always saying that, okay, the personal, eventually the politicians will just say, okay, we love this personal freedom of mobility so much and this individual choice that we allow it to be here. And this is what's causing all the trouble in us. So maybe with AI and with the capabilities, we can actually, in between, we can have an auctioning system, because pricing tends to be a very, very good tool, that there's a live auctioning system that kind of balances these between. So, okay, you can have all your individual freedoms, but you're actually going to have to pay for that. And for the rest, we'll do the efficiencies. And probably this could be what the AI brings into the whole system.
So what you're proposing is that there are incentives for more sustainable behavior. Is this what you're suggesting, Sampo, and that there, in this context, AI could help, yeah, by automating the right pricing structure so that people are incentivized to provide more sustainable behavior?
It could end up doing, let's say, the transport policy, but live. Because now what we do is transport policy that impacts the prices of a car or prices of gasoline or things like that, where it could be a live auction that, okay, hey, want to take your car right now into the center of London, it will be £35 because this is where we really want it starts to be congested, and it starts to say that, okay, but actually we're going to pay you £5 for taking the metro. So meaning that it could be functioning, this pricing system, balancing the freedom for everyone with CO2, with congestions, with safety, and all of this, and doing it live. And this is just throwing the idea in out there, but probably it will help. The problem of this policy against the actual freedom of mobility is that they're also not in the same time frame. The other one works with years or months or things like that. The other one is in minutes.
I mean, now we touched upon mobility as a service. We spoke about autonomous shuttle services, and I saw that you always linked it also to some extent to public transport. Yeah, mobility as a service will have an element of public transport. Autonomous shuttle services, I think many of them will be provided by public authorities. And I think it became clear that in the context of MaaS, in the context of autonomous shuttle services, it can be done wrongly in a way that maybe we have more congestions, we have more emissions, maybe we have even less safety, and it can be done right. What do you see as the role of public transport in the future to make it right? Yeah, is the role increasing? Is it decreasing? What can public transport do so that mobility becomes more sustainable and at the same time delivers what citizens expect from transport? Yeah, because maybe the most sustainable form of mobility is no mobility. Yeah, but I think we still need, yeah, mobility so that people are served for their everyday life and have a high level of welfare. Yeah. So what is your view on this?
I'll start by saying, to me, I have absolutely no doubt that public and mass transport has to feature in any mobility system. It has to. And it's not just about congestion, which I think everyone immediately leaps to. It's about the wider system and the importance of efficiency in that wider system. So if you take the transition, or even with diesel fuels, but even the transition to electrified mobility, having lots of people having single ownership cars and having to charge their cars and discharge their cars on the road, etc., is inefficient versus a bus which can carry 80 people, or a train that has traction current. So there's an energy consideration about how do we optimize use of energy. There's an infrastructure consideration, which is, okay, well, we've got congestion, we could just build more roads. Well, actually, that has a significant carbon impact, has a cost impact, has severance implications for cities. So that's not a solution either. Then there's the equity impact point, which is actually it's more efficient to distribute wealth through multiple different channels, and doing that through making public transport affordable, getting enough people paying to use public transport and therefore subsidising the people who do need to be subsidised, is a much more efficient way of having to tax people, take it up to the centre and push it back down again. So you've got three things that aren't even related to congestion that we've just discussed that mean that public transport is a really important part of the ecosystem. And then, of course, you've just got that pure part of congestion, which is that actually we do want people to be using public transport, and the more people who do, the better it is for everyone. The bus speeds increase, the throughput increases, you get more services, you get less cuts. So those are important aspects. But I think so in response to your question, it's not just driven by congestion, it's driven by a lot of other things. To what extent do you try and push everyone to public transport? Well, that's not sustainable or practical either, for the reasons that Sampo started out this round table by discussing, which is that sometimes it just won't be efficient or practical to do that. If I want to go to my local country park and go to some remote part of that, or go to the mountains, and I'm going to some remote part of that, the car's always probably going to be the best solution for that. If I want to cycle somewhere, that might be a better solution. And having cycle lanes through cities is very, very important. Getting balance between cycle lanes and public transport right, also very important, because actually one can detract from the other. If I want to get people walking, how do I do that? So yes, interchange creates a penalty in transport systems, but it also is quite helpful from a health perspective. So again, how do you get that balance right? There's no right answer to this, and you have to look at this on a place by place, demographic by demographic, system by system perspective, and say, well, what do we think is the right mix, the modal mix for our place and for the challenges we're facing, whether that be air quality, obesity, affordability of public transport, congestion, connecting people with work, jobs, schools, etc. All of these will need to be taken into account when you're designing that modal mix. But there should, I think, be a target modal mix for most places globally, and we should be aiming and aspiring to deliver that.
I fully agree with Ben. It will definitely be there. Now, what I think that the future brings as change is we need to still look at some of the structures and definition of what is public transport. It starts to be relatively hard now. I mean, everybody understands that a metro is public transport. When we go into the Waymo taxi or the AVs out there, we think that that's not public transport. But if they actually start having 8-seaters and bring people about in that, is that then public transport? And how do we deal with that? So I think would be very beneficial start looking at these complementing parts of it. Do we see also these micromobility players as part of public transport? Do we see cycle path as part of, or city bikes as part of it? is it always when there's at least two passengers in the same vehicle, does it start to be public transport? And it's in these where I think that we've got most to do. It's very, very obvious that the mass transit part is needed in all this, because cities will be more dense. There will be more of cities. This looks like a relatively inevitable development, and then it needs to be smoothly transported, and for that we do need good public transport and mass transit systems. Now it's in the rest parts that where the bustling happens, and I would say the less barriers we have in the definitions of what is what, and how also they are structured, how they are financed, how are they done, and daring to be a bit bold also in this one. Do we need to have just one provider, for example, for the AV shuttles of A-seaters, or should it be actually something with a lot of brands and a lot of competition and incentivization? And we would need to be a bit more daring in opening up some of these questions, because they also function from how they are funded. They function in a different format. We could and should be also at least questioning the part that, okay, now almost any part of at least Europe, if you take an intercity train, there's dynamic pricing. But for some reason, when you go inside and you have a commuter train, there's no dynamic pricing. They're in a tariff, they're in this and this way. We need to start opening up some of the structures in order to make it smooth, because for the individuals, I don't care if I am in a commuter train, intercity train, bus or something. I just please want to get there. And the more smooth the kind of pricing mechanisms, the more in line they are together. If I want to take my bike to the station, if I want to take a scooter to the station, or a taxi, or a shuttle, or whatever it is that they are, I do not have to overly think about what payment method, what tariffs, what these and these. The easier it is to make it actually complete. Because for the individual, the biggest money still, I agree, Ben, that people rationalize a lot, but still the biggest money that we spend for transportation lies on the promise of capacity, on that I could go anywhere, anytime.
Agreed.
First of all, I very much appreciate that you focus a lot also on other modes of transport, like which are related to micromobility, which I think are very important and become increasingly important, and make really a change also with respect to mobility in the city. And Sampo, what you point out is that maybe the differentiation between public transport services and private mobility services is not of such big importance. Yeah, I mean, at least they are services. At least they make maybe the dependence on privately owned modes of transport, like the car, less necessary. Yeah, I think that is maybe a big change which we are seeing. But I still think that public transport, the difference is that they include more also and take into consideration social aspects. Yeah, that for instance, they serve maybe rural areas better than a private service would do for commercial reasons. They maybe focus also more including people who are maybe at the moment at a disadvantage with respect to access to transport. Yeah, and in this respect, I think public transport certainly is very important. Yeah, and I believe that it's important that it will be also strengthened in the future with respect to the technologies which we are just discussing. Would you agree to this statement?
Definitely yes. It is important in all of this. I would more say that should we widen the definition of public transport? Should we widen the scope? And then think about maybe the structures of how to deliver that. Could it be one way or another, that part also widened? Because now it tends to be public transport here fully funded by public, and all the rest not. And there starts to already be a gray area somewhere here. And I don't think that we have regulatory nor as a society, we don't have the the full understanding of how this could work in an optimal way.
Now, one topic, and there we come now to maybe soon to the end of our discussion and our conversation, is data protection. And I mean, when we talk about AI and when we talk about the future of mobility, data will play an enormously important role. How do you see the situation concerning data for the future of, let's call it, AI-driven urban mobility? And how can cities balance the need for the data collection to optimize traffic management, to optimize delivery of services, with at the same time ensuring strong data protection and privacy of citizens? How do you see that this balance can be made in a good and acceptable manner?
I think it's, again, an evolution, not a revolution, of where we are today. If you consider, we've had electronic payments in transport for years. Some people choose to register their payment cards, some choose not to. And you get an incremental benefit as a customer if you register. So in London, I might be able to claim delay repay, or might get some other form of benefit from the ability from sharing some personal data, which the Transit Authority might not have. So I think there are already some fairly well established principles, GDPR in Europe, the Data Protection Act in the UK, which set out how data is processed, what it's actually collected for, how it's processed, how it's stored, who is the controller, who is the provider of data. And I think we need to continue applying those principles going forward. I think there is a risk that actually, without intending to, because we're now starting to collect so much data about customer journeys and patterns and demographic patterns, etc., that we end up being able to identify people who may not have selected to have been identified in the first place. And then we are actually building individual demographic profiles of people. And that's where we need to be careful. And there's already precedent in this space. The mobile phone companies have been doing it for years and selling data on passenger flows and people flows, but doing it by a concatenation, saying if there are fewer than n equals 10 people in that data set, we will not provide it to you, because there is a risk that you might start to get individuality as a result of it. So again, it's evolution of where we currently are, and applying the same principles going forwards. So I think that's important from a personal data perspective. You then have other data sets which are, again, increasingly being accessible or made available. Asset data is a really interesting one. Many years ago, I was working with a large transport authority somewhere in the world, shan't be named, on their on a major capital program, and they had a digital twin. And they were so proud of the digital twin of this beautiful new station that they'd published the whole thing online. But of course, that's a critical national infrastructure asset. And you don't necessarily want all of the information around electric conduits and gas work and water pipes, etc., being published. So there are considerations around, and that's just good data governance. That's not about AI. That's just around the fact that we want to provide more data, because if we share and federate digital twins, we're able to do better asset management, better capacity management for transport networks, and a whole range of other things, better wayfinding for passengers. But actually, we have to choose what data we share and decide what's sensitive and what's not. And then, of course, the final element is around the commercial data as well. So how do you, again, choose what data you're going to be comfortable with sharing, and what's commercially sensitive that you don't want to share. So I think a lot of this comes down to good data stewardship, good data governance, and building on the principles we already have, but just being really clear what data it is that we hold, what are we sharing, what could be actually inferred from various different data sets. What's the risk when we start pulling loads of data in together or providing different data sets out to other people who can consolidate it, and taking a logical step-by-step approach to thinking through it.
I kind of think of it that with how the development has been going, that we're going more and more towards that definition of market is one individual, that you have to kind of define all of these, and it starts to get more and more towards that for data also. Data that I produce is my data, and I will be more and more on top of, okay, so where is it used and how? At the moment, none of us really are. It does take relatively strong regulation. Like, in a way, Ben said, we do have these policies. I mean, I'm relatively okay with how the teleoperators are governed. They're quite strict with this because they also get their money from consumers. It always tends to come, if you actually take your money from consumers, you're bound to take harsher regulation that actually govern it. If you don't take the money from consumers, you take it from somewhere else, then the data of the person becomes the product, and more money comes directly from the users, the more regulated it probably will be. We've had for hundreds of years tough regulation. I mean, banks have known a lot of stuff about us, and we have accepted that, and then the world did not collapse or anything with all that data. So we have been able to actually do that. It's just now, of course, that it's easier to access, it's easier to misuse, it's easier for someone to do it with really wrong purposes, and this becomes then the data protection, not so much on the privacy part. Risks are big, provided that we are good in the regulation. I'm actually quite positive about we can sort this out.
I agree.
I mean, what I take with me today from this conversation is actually all the topics which we discussed. I had the impression that you have a very positive, very how should I say? You see opportunities, yeah, and I have not heard about any real barriers for the future of what I would call a better mobility, yeah, for people, a more sustainable mobility, a more efficient mobility. And maybe the last question which I would like to ask you, and I would ask you also for a very short answer, is what do you think is the most important aspect for achieving this, let's say, optimistic, positive vision of mobility, maybe within 10 years, yeah, in the context of mobility as a service, in the context of further electrification of transport, more micro-mobility, more autonomous shuttle services, and even stronger public transport. What would you see as the main driver of this? Yeah, if I would ask you to put this in 3 sentences, yeah, to be concise, and I know you will not touch everything, yeah, but what would be your main message? What is needed? And Sampo, would you like to start? You're smiling, yeah.
Me, okay. Strangely, I would say that the most important part is market creation. This is because these solutions cannot be done by one company alone. That means active policies, active regulation, and real market creation. If I want to take my European hat, at the moment, the mobility sector is not investable in Europe. Too fragmented, too unclear. It would to try to make it investable as such. The third point would be that we need to create a new balance between the individual freedom of mobility and what is societally sustainable.
Thank you, Sampo. Ben?
So I'd start first point with low-hanging fruit. There are many opportunities for deploying new technologies, AI being one of those, into current operations and delivering tangibly beneficial outcomes. Good example, chatbots with customers and customer support. Great example. And we've seen a lot of that happen with transport authorities and transport operators over the last year. So start with the low-hanging fruit. Secondly, small speedboats, clear target. Don't try and boil the ocean and do a massive, massive program. Do lots of small things that get you there, and take it in a staged way. And then I think the third thing is have a clear vision, and that links to what Sampo was saying in his last point as well, which is that we do have to have a clear vision on what we think the right answer is in terms of modal share and how we're going to design policy, infrastructure, transport operations, payments, fares, etc., around that to achieve that. So have a clear vision and then work backwards, right to left, on how you need to achieve it.
Ben, Sampo, thank you very much for this interview and all the insights. Yeah, it's highly appreciated. And as I said, yeah, I think we painted a positive, or you painted a positive picture of the future concerning mobility, but one which also needs a vision and a pragmatic approach from all of us. Yeah, and I could also imagine that we need further discussions like today, yeah, to create this common vision, this common understanding of the future, and to develop together also these pragmatic steps. Yeah. So thank you very much, Ben and Sampo, for this interview. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
So